The ancient olive tree I was sitting beneath had probably witnessed 1,000 sunsets over the hills of Galilee, but I doubt it had ever sheltered someone wrestling with a question as heartbreaking as the one burning in my spirit that evening. I'd come to Israel 3 days ago, not for filming or tourism, but because I desperately needed to hear from God about something that was destroying marriages all around me, including some I never thought could fail. The golden light of late afternoon was painting the Sea of Galilee in shades of amber and rose, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers across the hillside where Jesus once taught the multitudes. But despite the breathtaking beauty surrounding me, my heart was heavy with the weight of what I'd been witnessing back home. Marriage after marriage, good marriages, Christian marriages, marriages I'd admired and looked up to were growing cold, distant, and lifeless. And honestly, nobody seemed to understand why. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket, displaying yet another message that had driven me to seek God's face about this crisis. Jonathan, I don't know what happened to us. We used to be so in love, so connected, so passionate about each other and about serving God together. But somewhere along the way, we became strangers living in the same house. We're both believers, we both love Jesus, we go to church together, we pray together, but there's this coldness between us that I can't explain. It's like we're going through the motions of marriage without any of the life or love that used to be there. Please pray for us. We don't want to become another divorce statistic, but we don't know how to find our way back to each other. Sarah from Texas. I set the phone down on the grass beside me and stared out over the water where Jesus had walked, my heart breaking for Sarah and her husband. Their message was nearly identical to dozens of others I'd received over the past year, all describing the same mysterious phenomenon of marriages that had simply grown cold despite both spouses being committed Christians who were trying to do everything right. The sun was beginning to sink lower toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the hillside, when I felt the familiar stirring in my spirit that told me God wanted to speak. I'd learned to recognize that gentle pull, that divine invitation to ask the questions that were weighing on my heart. So I slipped off my sandals, feeling the cool grass beneath my feet, and began to walk slowly along the shoreline as I poured out my confusion to the Lord. Father, I said aloud, my voice carrying across the still water, I'm seeing so many marriages die slow, cold deaths, and I don't understand why. These aren't marriages destroyed by infidelity or abuse or addiction. These are marriages between good people, Christian people, people who love you and want to honor you with their relationship. But somehow, the love just disappears. The passion dies. The connection breaks. They become roommates instead of lovers, business partners instead of soulmates. I paused at the water's edge, watching the gentle waves lap against the ancient stones, and felt tears beginning to sting my eyes. Lord, what is killing these marriages? What is stealing the love and leaving behind this terrible coldness? Because whatever it is, it's happening everywhere and it's breaking my heart to watch. The silence that followed was profound, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then, slowly, I felt His presence beginning to surround me, not the overwhelming throne room presence I'd experienced in prayer rooms, but something gentler, more intimate, like a loving father sitting down beside his confused son to explain a difficult truth. My beloved son. His voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, carried on the evening breeze and reflected in the still water. You have asked the question that reveals one of the enemy's most successful and devastating strategies against my people. Tonight, as we walk together in this place where I once taught about love, I will show you the truth about what kills marriages, and it will shock you, because it's not what anyone expects. I felt my heart begin to race as I sensed the magnitude of what I was about to receive. This wasn't going to be a simple answer about communication or compatibility or commitment. This was going to be a revelation that would challenge everything I thought I knew about marriage and relationships. Lord, I whispered, pulling out my journal and finding a smooth boulder to sit on as the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. I'm ready to hear whatever you want to tell me, no matter how shocking it might be. What I am about to show you, God continued, His voice carrying both infinite love and holy authority, will explain why marriages that seem perfect on the outside can be dying on the inside. It will reveal why couples who pray together and serve together can still grow cold toward each other. It will expose the hidden killer that destroys love while leaving the appearance of a good marriage intact. I gripped my pen tightly, knowing that what I was about to write would potentially revolutionize how people think about marriage, love, and relationships. The gentle lapping of the waves against the shore seemed to be keeping time with my heartbeat as I prepared to receive one of the most important revelations of my life. The truth about cold marriages, God began, is not found in what couples are doing wrong in their relationship with each other. The truth is found in what they have stopped doing right in their relationship with me. I paused, my pen hovering over the page. Lord, I don't understand. Are you saying that marriage problems are really spiritual problems? I'm saying something much more specific than that, he replied, and I could hear both sadness and urgency in his voice. I'm saying that the coldness in marriage is a direct reflection of the coldness in their individual relationships with me. When a person's love for me grows cold, their capacity to truly love their spouse dies with it. When their passion for me fades, their passion for each other inevitably follows. When their intimacy with me becomes routine and lifeless, their intimacy with each other becomes routine and lifeless. The implications of what he was saying began to dawn on me, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. So you're saying that marriage coldness is actually a symptom of spiritual coldness? I'm saying that it's impossible to truly love another person with the depth, passion, and consistency that marriage requires when you have lost your first love for me, God explained. True marital love, the kind that lasts, the kind that grows stronger over time, the kind that can weather any storm, flows directly from a person's passionate, intimate, alive relationship with me. When that source dries up, everything else dries up with it. I thought about all the cold marriages I'd witnessed, and suddenly I began to see a pattern I'd never noticed before. In every case, when I really thought about it, both spouses had indeed grown cold in their relationship with God first. Their prayers had become routine. Their Bible reading had become obligation. Their worship had become performance. Their faith had become comfortable and predictable rather than passionate and alive. But Lord, I protested, still struggling to fully grasp what he was revealing, these couples are still going to church together. They're still praying together. They're still serving in ministry together. How can you say their relationship with you has grown cold? Because you are confusing religious activity with relational intimacy, he replied, and his words hit me like lightning. Going through the motions of faith is not the same as having a passionate, intimate, alive relationship with me. Praying together out of habit is not the same as crying out to me together in desperate love and need. Serving in ministry together because it's expected is not the same as being so on fire for me that you can't help but serve together. The truth was becoming clearer, but it was so revolutionary that I felt like my understanding of marriage was being completely reconstructed. So the coldness in marriage is really about the coldness in their individual walks with you. The coldness in marriage, God said with absolute authority, is the inevitable result of two people trying to love each other from empty wells. When a person's love for me becomes routine, predictable, and lifeless, they have nothing left to give their spouse except routine, predictable, lifeless affection. When their passion for me dies, their passion for everything else dies with it, including their passion for the person they married. I watched the last light of day fade from the sky, and somehow the growing darkness seemed to mirror the spiritual darkness that was killing marriages all around me. But why does this happen, Lord? Why do people who once loved you passionately grow cold? Why do couples who started their marriages on fire for you end up going through the motions? Because they have forgotten that love, both divine love and human love, requires the same thing to stay alive, he answered. It requires pursuit, attention, investment, and intentionality. It requires treating the beloved as precious, not taking them for granted. It requires choosing to fall in love again and again, not assuming that love will maintain itself automatically. The parallel he was drawing between our relationship with him and our relationships with our spouses was becoming crystal clear, and it was absolutely devastating in its accuracy. Most couples, God continued, spend the first years of marriage pursuing each other, investing in each other, being intentional about romance and connection and intimacy. But gradually, they begin to take each other for granted. They stop pursuing, stop investing, stop being intentional. They assume that love will maintain itself without effort, that passion will continue without fuel, that intimacy will survive without attention. And they do the exact same thing with me, I said, the revelation hitting me like a physical blow. Exactly, he confirmed. They start their relationship with me with passion, pursuit, and intentionality. They can't get enough of my word, my presence, my love. They pursue me desperately, invest time and energy in knowing me, and are intentional about growing closer to me every day. But gradually they begin to take me for granted. They stop pursuing me with passion and start going through religious motions. They stop investing in intimacy with me and start settling for surface-level spirituality. They assume that their relationship with me will maintain itself automatically. I was beginning to see the devastating connection. And when their love for you grows cold, their capacity to love their spouse with your love dies with it. When someone stops drinking from the well of my love, God explained, they have nothing left to give their spouse except human love, which is limited, conditional, and temporary. Human love runs out. Human love gets tired. Human love becomes selfish and demanding. But my love never runs out, never gets tired, never becomes selfish. When a person is constantly receiving my unlimited love, they have an unlimited supply to give their spouse. When they stop receiving my love, they quickly run dry. The truth was so simple and so profound that I couldn't believe I'd never seen it before. Every cold marriage I'd witnessed had followed the exact same pattern. Both spouses had gradually grown cold toward God first, and their coldness toward each other had inevitably followed. So the solution to cold marriages isn't marriage counseling or communication techniques or romantic getaways? I asked. Those things might treat the symptoms temporarily, God replied, but they will never cure the disease. The only cure for a cold marriage is for both spouses to fall desperately in love with me again. When they return to their first love for me, their first love for each other will be restored as well. When they begin pursuing me with passion again, they will begin pursuing each other with passion again. When they invest in intimacy with me, they will have something real to invest in intimacy with each other. I stood up from the boulder and began walking along the shoreline again, my mind reeling from the implications of what God was revealing. The moon had risen over the Sea of Galilee, casting a silver path across the water, and I felt like I was walking on holy ground as I received this life-changing truth. But Lord, I said, this means that every marriage problem is really a God problem. Every relationship issue is really a spiritual issue. Every case of marital coldness is really a case of spiritual coldness. Now you're beginning to understand, he replied, and I could hear both satisfaction and urgency in his voice. The enemy's greatest strategy against marriage is not to attack the marriage directly, it's to slowly, subtly, gradually cool the spouse's passion for me. He knows that if he can make their relationship with me routine and lifeless, their relationship with each other will become routine and lifeless, automatically. The revelation was staggering. I thought about how much time and energy the church spent on marriage, conferences, and relationship seminars and communication workshops, when the real issue was spiritual coldness that was killing marriages from the inside out. So, all those couples who are struggling with coldness in their marriage, I said, they don't need better communication techniques or date night ideas or love language training. They need to fall in love with you again. They need to remember what it felt like when they first met me, God confirmed. They need to recapture the passion, the pursuit, the intentionality that characterized their early relationship with me. They need to stop taking me for granted and start treasuring me as the most precious thing in their lives. They need to stop going through religious motions and start crying out to me with desperate love and need. As I walked along the water's edge, I felt God preparing to show me something even more specific and shocking about how this spiritual coldness manifests in marriage. The gentle breeze carried his voice across the still water. But Jonathan, what I have shown you so far is only the beginning. Tomorrow, I want to take you to a place where I can show you exactly how this coldness develops, stage by stage, and why it's so deadly to marriage. I want to show you the specific ways that couples stop pursuing me, and how that immediately affects their ability to pursue each other. I felt a mixture of anticipation and dread as I sensed that the most shocking parts of this revelation were still to come. Where do you want to meet me tomorrow, Lord? Meet me at sunrise in the Garden of Gethsemane, he replied. In the place where I poured out my heart in desperate prayer, I will show you what happens when couples stop pouring out their hearts to me in desperate prayer, and how that kills their ability to pour out their hearts to each other. As I made my way back up the hillside toward my small hotel, the weight of what I'd received pressed down on me like a holy burden. The truth about cold marriages was more shocking than I'd ever imagined, and I had a feeling that what God would show me tomorrow would be even more revolutionary. The question that had driven me to Israel was beginning to be answered, but the answer was challenging everything I thought I knew about love, marriage, and relationships. Cold marriages weren't really about marriage problems at all, they were about God problems. And if that was true, then the solution would be more radical than anyone expected. The ancient olive trees in the Garden of Gethsemane stood like silent sentinels in the pre-dawn darkness, their gnarled branches reaching toward a sky just beginning to blush with the first hints of sunrise. I'd been walking among these trees for nearly an hour, my footsteps muffled by centuries of fallen leaves, waiting for God to meet me in this sacred place where Jesus had poured out his heart in desperate prayer over 2,000 years ago. The air was cool and still, heavy with the scent of olive blossoms and morning dew, and I could feel the weight of history pressing down on this hallowed ground. Somewhere among these very trees, Jesus had wrestled with the Father's will, his sweat becoming like drops of blood as he faced the cross. And now, in this place of ultimate surrender and passionate prayer, God was about to show me how the absence of such desperate, heartfelt communion with him was systematically destroying marriages around the world. As the first golden rays of sunlight began to filter through the olive branches, casting dancing shadows across the garden floor, I felt his presence settling around me like a gentle embrace. But there was something different about his presence this morning, something more intense, more urgent, as if what he was about to reveal carried the weight of countless broken hearts and shattered dreams. My beloved son, his voice seemed to whisper through the rustling leaves above me, in this place where I demonstrated what passionate, desperate prayer looks like. I will show you what happens when my people stop praying with passion and desperation, and how that spiritual coldness immediately begins to kill their marriages. I found a smooth stone to sit on beneath one of the largest olive trees and opened my journal, my hands trembling slightly as I prepared to receive what I sensed would be the most specific and shocking part of this revelation. The morning light was growing stronger, painting the garden in shades of gold and green, but I felt like I was about to witness something that would cast shadows across everything I thought I knew about marriage and relationships. Lord, I whispered, show me exactly how this happens. Show me the stages, the progression, the specific ways that coldness toward you becomes coldness toward each other. Watch, he said, and suddenly the garden around me began to shimmer and change, as if I was seeing through a window into the lives of real couples whose marriages were slowly dying from spiritual starvation. The first vision that materialized before me was of a young couple in their kitchen, probably married about 5 years, based on their comfortable familiarity with each other. They were going through their morning routine, coffee, breakfast, checking phones, but something about their interaction felt mechanical, lifeless, like actors playing roles they'd performed 1,000 times before. This is David and Michelle, God explained, his voice carrying infinite sadness. They've been married for 6 years, and they love each other, or at least they think they do. But watch their morning prayer time and you'll see the beginning of their marriage's death. I watched as David and Michelle sat down at their kitchen table, held hands, and began to pray together, but their prayers were perfunctory, routine, filled with religious phrases and predictable requests. There was no passion, no desperation, no sense that they were actually communicating with the living God. They were going through the motions of prayer without any of the heart connection that makes prayer alive and powerful. Stage 1, God said, and his voice carried the weight of divine diagnosis. Prayer becomes performance instead of passion. They still pray together, but they're not really praying to me. They're performing a religious ritual that makes them feel like good Christians. They've stopped pouring out their hearts to me with desperate love and need, and they've started reciting familiar words that require no vulnerability, no intimacy, no real connection. But how does that affect their marriage? I asked, though I was beginning to sense the answer. Watch their interaction immediately after prayer, he instructed. I observed as David and Michelle finished their routine prayer and immediately returned to their mechanical morning activities. But now I could see something I'd missed before. There was no lingering connection between them, no sense that their shared time with God had drawn them closer to each other. They had prayed together without actually connecting with God, and as a result, they hadn't connected with each other either. When prayer becomes performance, God explained, couples stop experiencing me together, which means they stop experiencing the deep spiritual intimacy that bonds hearts at the deepest level. They're going through religious motions side by side, but they're not actually meeting me together, which means they're not actually meeting each other at the soul level. The vision shifted, and I saw the same couple 6 months later. Their morning prayer routine had become even more mechanical, and I could see a subtle but unmistakable distance growing between them. They still held hands during prayer, but their grip was loose, distracted. They still prayed together, but their words were even more routine, more lifeless. Stage 2, God continued. Worship becomes obligation instead of overflow. Watch them at church this Sunday. The scene changed to show David and Michelle in their church pew, singing worship songs with the congregation. but their participation was dutiful rather than passionate, obligatory rather than overflowing. They sang the words, they went through the motions, but there was no fire in their eyes, no desperation in their voices, no sense that they were actually encountering the living God through worship. When worship becomes obligation, God explained, people stop experiencing the overwhelming love and presence that transforms hearts and fills them with supernatural love for others. They're singing about my love without actually receiving my love, which means they have no fresh supply of divine love to give their spouse. I watched as David and Michelle left church that Sunday, and I could see that their worship experience had done nothing to draw them closer to God or to each other. They had participated in a religious service without actually encountering the God who could have filled their hearts with fresh love and passion for each other. But they're still doing all the right things, I protested. They're still praying together, still going to church together, they're still performing religious activities together, God corrected me, but they're not actually connecting with me together. And when couples stop connecting with me, they inevitably stop connecting with each other at the deepest levels. The spiritual intimacy that bonds hearts dies first, and emotional and physical intimacy always follow. The vision fast-forwarded another year, and I could see that David and Michelle's relationship had grown noticeably colder. They still lived together, still functioned as a married couple, still went through all the external motions of a Christian marriage. But the life, the passion, the deep connection that had once characterized their relationship was clearly dying. Stage 3, God said, his voice heavy with grief. Bible reading becomes routine instead of relationship. Watch their evening devotions. I observed as the couple sat together on their couch, each with their own Bible, reading through their daily devotional plan. But they were reading the words without really hearing my voice, going through the motions of Bible study without actually encountering me through Scripture. Their reading was mechanical, obligatory, lifeless. When my word becomes routine instead of relationship, God explained, people stop hearing my voice, stop receiving my love, stop being transformed by my truth. They're reading about me without actually meeting me, which means they're not being filled with the love, grace, and passion that I want to pour into their hearts for each other. The progression was becoming devastatingly clear. As David and Michelle's individual relationships with God grew colder and more routine, their relationship with each other was growing colder and more routine in exact parallel. They were still going through all the motions of both faith and marriage, but the life was draining out of both relationships simultaneously. Stage 4, God continued. Service becomes duty instead of devotion. Watch them at their ministry commitment this week. The scene shifted to show David and Michelle serving together in their church's children's ministry. But their service was dutiful rather than joyful, obligatory rather than overflowing. They were going through the motions of ministry without the passion and love that makes service a form of worship. When service becomes duty instead of devotion, God explained, couples are working together without actually being filled with my love and joy together. They're serving me out of obligation rather than overflow, which means their service doesn't draw them closer to me or to each other. Instead of being a source of shared passion and purpose, ministry becomes just another task they perform together without heart connection. I was beginning to see the complete picture, and it was more shocking than I'd ever imagined. Every aspect of David and Michelle's spiritual life had gradually become routine, mechanical, and lifeless, and their marriage was dying in exact proportion to their spiritual coldness. But the most devastating stage is still coming, God warned me, his voice carrying an urgency that made my heart race. The vision jumped forward another 2 years, and I could see that David and Michelle's marriage was now hanging by a thread. They still lived together, still went to church together, still prayed together, still served together, but there was an unmistakable coldness between them that was painful to witness. They had become roommates going through religious motions together rather than lovers sharing a passionate relationship with God and each other. Stage 5, God said, and his voice broke with divine heartbreak. Intimacy becomes impossible because they have nothing left to give each other. Watch their attempt at connection tonight. I observed as David tried to initiate physical intimacy with Michelle, but the encounter was mechanical, lifeless, unsatisfying for both of them. They were going through the motions of physical connection without any of the spiritual and emotional intimacy that makes physical intimacy truly fulfilling. When people stop receiving my love through passionate prayer, worship, Bible reading, and service, God explained, they have nothing left to give each other except human love, which is limited, selfish, and temporary. They're trying to love each other from empty wells, trying to give what they don't have, trying to share passion they haven't received from me. The truth hit me like lightning. So their marriage isn't really dying because of marriage problems, it's dying because of God problems. Their marriage is dying, God confirmed, because they have gradually, subtly, almost imperceptibly stopped pursuing me with the passion, desperation, and intentionality that keeps love alive. They've turned their relationship with me into a religious routine, and their relationship with each other has become a marital routine in exact parallel. I stood up from the stone and began pacing among the olive trees, my mind reeling from the implications of what I was witnessing. But Lord, they probably don't even realize what's happening. They probably think they're still good Christians with a good marriage. That's what makes this so devastating, he replied. The death happens so gradually, so subtly, that couples don't recognize it until it's almost too late. They're still performing all the external activities of faith and marriage, but the life has slowly drained out of both relationships. They've become religious roommates instead of passionate lovers, united in desperate love for me. The sun was now fully risen, casting bright golden light through the olive branches, but the beauty of the morning couldn't diminish the weight of what God was revealing about the systematic destruction of marriages through spiritual coldness. Show me more, I said, knowing that I needed to understand this completely if I was going to help couples recognize and reverse this deadly pattern. The vision shifted to show me dozens of other couples, all at different stages of the same progression. I saw newlyweds whose prayers were already becoming routine. I saw couples married 10 years whose worship had become obligatory. I saw couples married 20 years whose Bible reading had become mechanical. I saw couples married 30 years who were serving together out of duty rather than devotion. The timeline varies, God explained, but the pattern is always the same. As their individual relationships with me grow cold, their relationship with each other grows cold in exact proportion. As they stop pursuing me with passion, they stop pursuing each other with passion. As they stop investing in intimacy with me, they lose the ability to invest in true intimacy with each other. But why does this happen? I asked desperately. Why do people who start out passionate about you gradually grow cold? Why do couples who begin marriage on fire for you end up going through religious motions? Because they make the same mistake in their relationship with me that they make in their relationship with each other, God replied. And his answer was so simple and profound that it took my breath away. They stop pursuing and start assuming. They stop investing and start taking for granted. They stop treating me as precious and start treating me as predictable. The parallel was devastating in its accuracy. So they fall out of love with you the same way couples fall out of love with each other, by stopping the pursuit, the investment, the intentionality that keeps love alive. Love, both divine love and human love, requires the same things to stay alive, God confirmed. It requires treating the beloved as precious, not predictable. It requires pursuit, not assumption. It requires investment, not neglect. It requires intentionality, not routine. When people stop pursuing me with fresh passion every day, their love for me grows cold. When their love for me grows cold, their capacity to love their spouse with my love dies with it. I felt tears streaming down my face as the full weight of this revelation settled into my heart. Every cold marriage I'd ever witnessed suddenly made perfect sense. Every couple who had grown distant despite being good Christians now had an explanation for their coldness. Every relationship that had died a slow, inexplicable death could now be understood through this lens of spiritual coldness, leading to marital coldness. So the solution, I said through my tears, isn't better communication or more date nights or marriage counseling. The solution is for both spouses to fall desperately in love with you again. The solution, God confirmed with absolute authority, is for couples to return to their first love for me with the same passion, pursuit, and intentionality that characterized their early relationship with me. When they begin pursuing me desperately again, they will begin pursuing each other desperately again. When they start receiving my unlimited love through passionate prayer, worship, Bible reading, and service, they will have unlimited love to give each other. As the morning light grew brighter in the Garden of Gethsemane, I felt God preparing to give me the most shocking and specific instructions about how couples could reverse this deadly pattern and restore the passion to both their relationship with Him and their relationship with each other. Tomorrow, he said, his voice carrying both hope and urgency, meet me at the place where I turned water into wine, the place where I performed my first miracle to celebrate love and marriage. There, I will show you exactly how couples can turn the cold water of routine religion back into the wine of passionate love. The ruins of ancient Cana lay scattered across the hillside like forgotten wedding gifts, their weathered stones bearing silent witness to countless celebrations of love throughout the centuries. I'd arrived at sunrise, drawn by God's promise to meet me at the place where Jesus had performed, his first miracle turning water into wine at a wedding feast. The irony wasn't lost on me that in this place where Christ had celebrated and enhanced marital joy, I was about to receive the solution for marriages that had turned from wine back into water. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of wild jasmine that grew between the ancient stones, and as I picked my way carefully through the archaeological site, I could almost hear the echoes of celebration that had once filled this place. Somewhere among these ruins, a bride and groom had experienced the miracle of Jesus transforming their ordinary wedding into something extraordinary. And now, in this same location, God was about to show me how couples could experience the miracle of their ordinary routine marriages being transformed back into something extraordinary. I found a large, flat stone that might have once been part of the wedding feast's foundation and sat down with my journal, watching the sun paint the Galilean hills in shades of gold and amber. The silence was profound, but it carried an expectancy that made my spirit tremble with anticipation. After 2 days of receiving shocking revelations about why marriages turn cold, I was desperate to hear God's solution for restoring the wine of passion to relationships that had become nothing but cold water. My beloved son. His voice came like a gentle breeze across the ruins, carrying both the authority of divine truth and the tenderness of a father's love. In this place where I turned water into wine to celebrate love, I will show you how couples can turn the cold water of routine religion back into the wine of passionate love, both for me and for each other. I gripped my pen tightly, knowing that what I was about to receive could literally save thousands of marriages that were slowly dying from spiritual starvation. The morning light was growing stronger, casting long shadows across the ancient stones, and I felt like I was sitting in a holy operating room where God was about to perform heart surgery on dying relationships. Lord, I whispered, show me exactly what couples need to do. Show me the specific steps, the practical actions, the concrete changes that can restore life to marriages that have grown cold. The solution, God began, his voice carrying the weight of divine authority, is not complicated, but it is radical. It requires couples to do something that most believers have never been taught and many will resist. They must learn to pursue me with the same intentionality, creativity, and desperation that they once pursued each other during their dating relationship. The comparison hit me like lightning. I thought about how couples behave when they're falling in love. The constant pursuit, the creative dates, the thoughtful gifts, the long conversations, the desperate desire to know everything about each other, the willingness to sacrifice anything to spend time together. Then I thought about how most believers approach their relationship with God: routine prayers, obligatory church attendance, mechanical Bible reading, dutiful service. You're saying they need to date you? I asked, the concept so revolutionary that I could barely wrap my mind around it. I'm saying they need to pursue me with the same passion, creativity, and intentionality that they once pursued each other, God replied, and I could hear both love and longing in his voice. They need to stop treating me like a predictable spouse they've been married to for decades and start treating me like the love of their life they're desperately trying to win. The vision that began to unfold before me was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Instead of the dying marriages I'd witnessed in Gethsemane, I was now seeing couples who were absolutely on fire for God and, as a result, absolutely on fire for each other. The first couple I saw was sitting together on their living room floor at 5 a.m., but instead of going through routine morning prayers, they were crying out to God with desperate passion and need. Their prayers weren't religious performances, they were intimate conversations with someone they were madly in love with. They were pouring out their hearts, sharing their deepest fears and dreams, asking for his guidance with the same vulnerability they had once shared with each other during late-night phone calls when they were dating. Step 1, God explained. Couples must learn to pray together with the same vulnerability, intimacy, and desperation that they once talked together when they were falling in love. No more routine prayers, no more religious performances, no more going through the motions. They must cry out to me together like lovers who can't bear to be apart from their beloved. I watched in amazement as this couple's passionate prayer time created an immediate intimacy between them that was palpable. When they finished praying, They looked at each other with eyes full of love, connection, and spiritual fire. Their shared encounter with God had drawn them closer to each other at the deepest possible level. But how do they learn to pray like that? I asked. Most couples have been praying routine prayers for years. How do they break out of that pattern? The same way they learned to talk intimately with each other when they were dating, God replied. They start by being completely honest about their real feelings, their real struggles, their real needs. They stop trying to sound spiritual and start being authentic. They stop performing for each other and start being vulnerable with me in each other's presence. The vision shifted to show me the same couple during their evening devotion time, but instead of mechanically reading through a devotional book, they were studying God's Word together like lovers reading love letters. They were discovering things about God's character that made them fall more in love with Him, and their excitement about what they were learning was infectious. They were asking questions, sharing insights, getting excited about God's promises like teenagers getting excited about their first love. Step 2, God continued. Couples must approach my word like love letters, from someone they're desperately in love with, not like textbooks they're required to study. They must read scripture together with the same excitement and anticipation that they once read each other's text messages when they were dating. I could see that this couple's passionate approach to Bible study was creating the same kind of spiritual intimacy that their passionate prayer time had created. They were encountering God together through His Word, and that shared encounter was bonding their hearts at the deepest level. Step 3, God said, and the vision shifted to show me the couple at their church's worship service. Couples must worship me together with the same abandon and passion that they once danced together when they were falling in love. No more dutiful singing, no more going through the motions, no more worrying about what others think. They must lose themselves in worship the way they once lost themselves in each other's arms. I watched as this couple worshipped with complete abandon, their faces radiant with love for God, their voices crying out in passionate adoration, their hearts completely surrendered to the one they loved most. And I could see that their passionate worship was creating an intimacy between them that was almost tangible. They were experiencing God together in a way that was drawing them closer to each other than any marriage conference or date night ever could. But Lord, I interrupted, this is so different from how most couples approach their spiritual life together. This is so much more intense, so much more passionate than what most believers are comfortable with. Exactly, he replied, and his voice carried both challenge and invitation. Most couples have settled for a comfortable, predictable, routine relationship with me, and they wonder why their marriage has become comfortable, predictable, and routine. If they want the wine of passionate love, they must be willing to pursue me with the fire and desperation that creates passionate love. The vision expanded to show me this couple throughout their entire week, and I was amazed by what I saw. They were pursuing God together with the same creativity and intentionality that couples use to pursue each other when they're dating. They were taking prayer walks together like they once took romantic walks. They were having deep conversations about God's character, like they once had deep conversations about their dreams and fears. They were serving together in ministry with the same joy and excitement that they once planned dates together. Step 4, God explained, couples must serve me together with the same joy and creativity that they once planned dates together. Ministry must become their shared adventure, their joint mission, their way of expressing love for me, together, not a duty they perform out of obligation. I watched as this couple served in their church's outreach ministry, but their service was overflowing with joy, passion, and love. They weren't serving out of duty, they were serving out of overflow. Their individual relationships with God were so alive and passionate that serving together had become a natural expression of their shared love for Him. And the result? I asked, though I could already see the answer in their radiant faces and obvious connection. The result, God said with satisfaction, is that their marriage has become more passionate, more intimate, and more alive than it was even during their honeymoon. When couples pursue me together with desperate love, I fill them with so much love for each other that they can barely contain it. When they receive my unlimited love through passionate prayer, worship, Bible study, and service, they have unlimited love to give each other. The vision shifted to show me this couple's private moments together, and I was amazed by the depth of intimacy, passion, and connection I witnessed. Their physical relationship was incredible because their spiritual relationship was incredible. Their emotional connection was profound because their shared connection with God was profound. Their communication was intimate because they had learned to be intimate with God together. This is the miracle of Cana, God explained. his voice filled with joy. When couples learn to pursue me with passionate love, I transform the cold water of their routine relationship into the wine of passionate love, both for me and for each other. The same miracle I performed at this wedding feast I perform in marriages today when couples are willing to pursue me with desperate, creative, intentional love. But then the vision showed me something that broke my heart. I saw thousands of couples who were being offered this solution but were rejecting it because it seemed too radical, too intense, too different from their comfortable spiritual routine. Why do they resist? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Because passionate love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires risk, God replied sadly. It's easier to go through religious motions than to cry out to me with desperate need. It's safer to sing worship songs dutifully than to lose themselves in passionate adoration. It's more comfortable to read my word mechanically than to approach it like love letters from their beloved. It's less threatening to serve out of obligation than to serve out of overflow. I realized that the solution to cold marriages was available to every couple, but it required them to abandon their comfortable, predictable spiritual routine and pursue God with the same fire they had once pursued each other. But for those who are willing, God continued, his voice brightening with hope, the transformation is immediate and miraculous. Watch what happens when couples choose to pursue me with passionate love. The vision showed me couple after couple who had made the decision to abandon routine religion and pursue God with desperate, creative, intentional love. In every case, the transformation was dramatic and immediate. Their individual relationships with God came alive with passion and fire, and their relationships with each other were transformed in exact parallel. I saw couples who had been cold and distant for years suddenly unable to keep their hands off each other because they were so filled with God's love. I saw marriages that had been hanging by a thread suddenly becoming stronger than they had ever been because both spouses were receiving unlimited love from God to give each other. I saw relationships that had been routine and predictable suddenly becoming adventures of passion and intimacy because both partners were experiencing passionate intimacy with God. The solution is simple, God said with absolute authority, but it requires couples to make a radical choice. They must choose to pursue me with the same desperation, creativity, and intentionality that they once pursued each other. They must treat me like the love of their life, not like a predictable religious obligation. They must approach prayer, worship, Bible study, and service like lovers, approaching their beloved, not like students completing assignments. As the sun climbed higher over the ruins of Cana, I felt God preparing to give me his final, most urgent instructions about this life-saving solution for dying marriages. Tell them, he said, his voice carrying the weight of eternity, that the wine of passionate love is available to every couple, but it requires them to abandon the water of routine religion. Tell them that I am waiting to transform their cold, predictable spiritual life into a passionate love affair that will overflow into their marriage and make it more alive than they ever dreamed possible. And tell them this, his voice intensified with divine urgency, that I am not interested in their religious performances or their dutiful obligations. I am desperately in love with them, and I am longing for them to fall desperately in love with me. When they do, their capacity to love each other will be transformed beyond recognition. I stood up from the ancient stone and walked among the ruins, my heart burning with the magnitude of what I had received. The solution to cold marriages wasn't complicated, but it was radical. It wasn't difficult to understand, but it was challenging to implement. It required couples to abandon their comfortable spiritual routine and pursue God like lovers pursuing their beloved. Lord, I said through tears, this is going to revolutionize how people think about marriage and spirituality. This is going to challenge couples to completely transform their approach to their relationship with you. Good, he replied with fierce determination. It's time for my people to understand that I am not a religious obligation to be managed, I am a passionate lover to be pursued. It's time for them to stop settling for the water of routine religion and start experiencing the wine of passionate love. It's time for them to discover that the secret to an extraordinary marriage is an extraordinary relationship with me. As I prepared to leave the ruins of Cana, God gave me one final instruction that made my spirit tremble with holy urgency. Tell them that their marriage can be transformed, starting today, this very moment, if they are willing to abandon routine religion and pursue me with desperate love. Tell them that I am waiting to turn the water of their cold marriage into the wine of passionate love, but it requires them to pursue me like their life depends on it, because their marriage does depend on it. I walked back down the hillside as the morning sun climbed higher, my journal filled with the most revolutionary marriage advice I'd ever received. The truth about cold marriages had been revealed, and the solution was more shocking and more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. The wine of passionate love was available to every couple, but it required them to pursue God with the same desperation they had once pursued each other. The question was, were they willing to abandon the water of routine religion for the wine of passionate love? Their marriage's survival depended on their answer.